When you open an assembly in one of the lighter modes, it is a good start, but there are additional tools that can make the assembly even lighter. Some of these less automatic techniques include subassemblies, display states, SpeedPaks, configurations, Defeature, envelopes, and envelope publisher. They can be used alone or in combination, but they are all used of the same reason, to speed things up. Let's take a quick look at each one. Subassemblies can be used to combine component part and assemblies into single component at the top level of the assembly. This group the component and lets you edit a larger subassembly by opening in the smaller chunks. Display state control the visibility of components. For example, hidden components that don't have to be loaded. Selection tools can make bulk selection easier. SpeedPaks are derived configuration that reduce components to graphics and some key of geometry. Using configuration is the best way to control your assemblies. Simplified configuration can be created to suppress unneeded feature way down at the part level. Less complex part can be loaded, edited, and saved faster. The Defeature tool can be used to simplify a component by creating a version with just geometry. No feature, just a dumb solid. Assemblies break down to parts with the multiple solid bodies. Assembly envelopes are special types of component that can be used with the selection tool as a reference geometry. The envelope publisher allows you to attach components part to subassembly so that they open the subassembly. The downside of these techniques is the setup. Each of the requires some upfront work, but that work is saved with the assembly files. We will discuss these topics in more detail later. Subassemblies are used to break this assembly down into smaller, logical, more manageable chunks that can be and work on independently of the large main assembly. The first benefit of using subassembly is the feature manager design tree is much shorter and easier to work with. Subassembly is treated as single rigid component and is mated as a single body. Only the few mates use the place of lift top level assembly, saving many top level mates. In addition to making things easier to work on, it make things faster. Mates are located with the components in the subassemblies. Assemblies can also be nested inside the other assemblies multiple layers deep. Note that some activities like assembly motion may require some of top level components and mate are the use of flexible subassemblies. Display states are used to control component visibility and store the setting under unique names. Each assembly can have multiple display states and configurations. The general rule is that display state control difference in appearance and configuration control the more substantial parameters such as expression states. You can use display states to control hide and show, display mode, appearance, and transparency of components. A SpeedPak is a special type of configuration that you can use to simplify geometry while maintaining some of the reference geometry such as face geometry used for mates. The geometry is simplified but not suppressed. It's good for geometry that we want to use but don't need to select the file. The SpeedPak configuration of the assembly is substitute for the current configuration. Using simplified configuration is the best way to control assembly, but it requires the most setup. Starting at the lowest level, the component part, a simplified configuration is created by suppressing features that are not critical for mates or other selections. Often features like fillets and chamfers can be suppressed in simplified configurations. In assemblies, the simplified configurations continue. Assemblies have a simplified configuration that calls out the simplified configurations in the components. Parts are assemblies that they reference. For example, the rocker arm part is used in the rocker arm assembly, which in turn is used in the head assembly. The head assembly contains multiple instances of the rocker arm assembly, and the head assembly itself is then used in the top level engine assembly. Every component references a simplified configuration from the level below. You can use the Defeature tool to simplify component part or assembly by using a different method that a SpeedPak or simplified configuration creates a graphically simplified look alike model by removing the feature and components. As an assembly ends up a multi-body part with dumb solid bodies, they have to feature intelligence just pure graphics. For example, this subassembly with 25 fully featured components 2 levels deep and 6 mate is reduced to a single multi-body part. There are no internal mates feature or levels. There are two sub options to create a defeatured component. Use the simplify geometry option to remove component and geometry by working through a detail wizard. The silhouette option simplifies by using the silhouette outlines of components and may provide a very rough representation. Envelopes are a great way to set components visually and technically as reference geometry. For example, the swing required to open a cover or the volume needed for tools or replace a fastener might be represented as envelope volumes. You can also use them as selection tools in select using envelope and show hide using envelope. They appear as transparent blue graphics. These components, parts and sub-assemblies created for standard components in the component properties dialog. A bill of material or mass properties calculation will ignore envelope components. The envelope publisher is tool that you can use to combine a subassembly with selected top level component parts. So rather than just opening the subassembly, you can also get the additional components as envelopes with the subassembly. This allows you to open smaller chunks of geometry extending the capabilities of subassembly. Also the additional components and true envelopes. So they can be used like another envelopes for reference and selection. Assembly visualization is a testing tool. With it you can sort component parts into color coded range based on property values. For example, if we sort the quantity column highest to lowest, we'll see the components with the lowest value are the last number of instances. We will use a component with the last. There is a large list of properties that can be used in the right column. Some available properties include fully mated flexible sub-assemblies toolbox parts as well as multi-body SolidWorks and sustainability specific properties. The graphic triangles property can be used for relative measurement for part size, and it can be used to identify and compare graphically complex components. It helps you decide which component